What is conservatism and what does it mean to be a conservative? Welcome back to my series, The Politics Playbook, and today's episode is on conservatism. My last episode was liberalism, so now we're moving on to conservatism. Conservatism is a political philosophy and it generally values tradition, stability, rule of law, strong institutions, gradual change, and personal responsibility. They believe that any sort of change or reform should be done slowly. They believe a stable society is a successful society. They believe that reform should be careful and incremental rather than revolutionary and extreme. A guy called Edmund Burke is usually considered as the father of conservatism. He's widely considered as the founder of modern conservatism. However, he did also have a lot of liberal principles and liberal ideologies, making it a little bit more difficult than just placing him on the left or the right. A common stereotype of conservatives is that they don't like any form of change. However, they do, it just needs to be slow and controlled. They will typically argue that change should be more evolutionary rather than revolutionary. Conservatives will generally argue that institutions like parliament, the government, families, traditions have all developed over time and are the way they are because they work, that they shouldn't be changed without really careful thought. However, it is important to note when discussing these political philosophies that they aren't just one ideology, they are a wide spectrum of ideas and ideologies. There are many traditions and nuances to conservatism, so you can't just put them all in one box. However, as a general rule, this is kind of who they are and what they support. Side note, political philosophies and political ideologies, they are closely related, however they are fundamentally different. Political philosophy is generally an open-ended question about society, ruling, power, etc., whereas an ideology gives a more action-oriented approach to that. Typically, ideologies will be derived from the philosophies as a way to sort of answer that open-ended question. Back to conservatives, they generally believe that society works when change is done carefully and in ways that are already proven to work. They don't believe in sort of extreme or radical reform like liberals may do. A general misconception about conservatism is that it's the direct opposite of liberalism, which isn't necessarily true. However, the two have historically been linked to having different political beliefs. While conservatism is very broad, I'm going to list a few kind of policies and ideologies that general conservatives may have. They'll typically advocate for lower taxes. They believe that people should keep the money that they earn, and that goes for businesses as well. Hand in hand with that, they also support capitalism as they believe that the markets should be free. They believe in strong law and order and will generally advocate for more police funding and tougher sentences for crimes. It's probably the most relevant at the moment is they are very big on controlled immigration. They aren't necessarily anti-immigration, but they do believe it should be done in a very controlled and serious way, I guess. They are typically pro-monarchy and pro-religion, and they believe a lot in national sovereignty, which means that national governments should be making more decisions than international governments. Anyway, this is very long now. I hope that made sense. Let me know if there's anything else you want me to cover and come back for the next episode of the Politics Playbook.